on YouTube right now.
On YouTube right now.
And we're going to stream to the correct Twitch account right now.
So nice to be with professionals.
Yep, professionals. They click the right menu option.
When did they show up?
Wow.
I'm just asking. They aren't here yet.
All
Who
right.
can it be now?
Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started as we do each and every single week by introducing my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Hey, squirrel friends.
And Ruben Bressler.
I have no follow-up to that.
I literally just figured out that I screwed up your guys' portraits and you're backwards. So you're going to take a moment.
No.
So
I am
want you
Aaron
guys-
Campbell.
Hey.
I'm Ruben Wrestler.
Hey, squirrel friends. Right? Did I do it right?
You know, we
You're
were
supposed to
talking about
follow
being
it up,
professional, and here we are.
I am a golem.
And I'm a
Right?
trickster.
All right. I have fixed it. Ladies and gentlemen, we begin as we do each and every week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Ruben Bressler.
That's you.
Oh, hi.
There we go.
And Aaron Campbell.
Hi. Hey, squirrel friends.
Hey, y'all.
How long are we going to hold up this joke? I mean, I'll do it the whole episode.
You'll
if
do
you
the
want.
whole thing. We have had a week off, unfortunately, but I was in Dallas. I attended the BoardGameGeek.com convention. That was fun. I got to try some really cool Kickstarter-y things that nobody else has really played much yet, and got to meet some designers and developers and publishers, and got to watch people nerd out.
Of the games that you can talk about, what was the best one that you played?
There was one called Spoils of War, and if you've ever played Liar's Dice, it's sort of like Liar's Dice with another realm of betting and another realm of set collection, and it was really cool. And you know, cards that give you special abilities and things. It's basically for those who haven't played those games, you know, essentially you roll dice, you figure, you know, you see what dice that you rolled, and other people's dice that they rolled are secret, and then you figure out things like, you know, I think that there are 3 3s, and someone says, well, maybe there's 4 5s or whatever, and you keep going around until someone says, you know, I don't believe that there are 7 6s, and I'm calling you on that, and then you bet on that, and whoever wins. So regardless, so that was pretty fun. And then I played some games that I really didn't like, but we won't bash
That's
people.
fine.
However, because not every game is for everybody, but it was neat. Had some really great food there. Shout out to Babe's Chicken and Tommy Tamale. That's good stuff. Now, Hard 8 was Hard 8, and Ruben, you've been to Hard 8, you know.
Dude, Hard 8. So if you've never been to Hard 8, it's an experience. You gotta go.
I've been to Hard 8.
Have you actually been to Hard 8, or are you just saying that because it's called Hard 8?
Are you just saying that because you like to do?
Hard 8?
Yeah,
I've been to Hard 8 with your innuendos. So anyway, what you do is you get there and you have to wait in line outside.
Right.
So like during the fall or the winter, it's a little chilly. But the reason why you're waiting outside is because they have 2 grills the size of a minivan.
Wow.
And that are open and just have meats on every portion of the grill, and they say, what would you like? And you say, I'd like to have a 1/4 pound of sausage links and a 1/2 pound of the chicken and a 1/4 pound of the ribs and a 1/2 pound of the and then they just put it on your tray. There's no plates. You just have a tray, brown paper that they just put your meat on, and then you walk inside, and then you just take the sides that you want, and then they weigh it.
They weigh it.
They weigh it.
At the end
Wow.
you get to the cash register and they weigh your meat. Please don't. They weigh your meat.
Oh! Now we're
thinking
please
it.
don't-ing? That's what we're doing
You were
now?
thinking it. I
We're
know
please
you were
don't-ing.
thinking it.
Okay.
But
Right.
in any case, that place is great.
That place
sounds
is
like it.
fantastic. I mean, the fact that apparently, you know, paying by weight is like a big thing in Texas, as I was talking to some other people who've been to Texas. That's a thing. However, you know, there was there's
It's
not
worth
just
going
the
for the
big barbecue
experience.
place. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we're back. You know, some stuff happened in Magic. It's time to talk about it. First thing.
And we're doing it a day early because everybody's traveling tomorrow.
Right,
Yeah.
So
because
we're out of the,
So thanks for coming out with the schedule change.
Appreciate it.
yeah, so for those who are hanging out, thank you very much for hanging out for one day early. You know, we didn't give a whole lot of notice, but that's because, you know, that's me. However, Wizards of the Coast, and my apologies, Wizards of the Coast decided to announce something right before the World Magic Cup, that they were going to stream Magic events exclusively on Twitch.tv. They then showed an announcement to the world which said basically not much. It said, hey, we're only going to be on Twitch now. They don't mention YouTube because that means YouTube's not included. YouTube being where they were streaming all events simultaneously. Both Twitch and YouTube got their own stream, just like those who are watching right now on YouTube and Twitch. How you doing? But you have an agreement here which basically says nothing, says something about like better/more coverage, quote unquote, no specifics, but enjoy not having it available on YouTube because some people have Twitch blocked at work, which certainly can make a lot of sense, where YouTube could have, work purposes, whereas Twitch is basically just 100% not work purposes. So I don't know sort of how to feel about that, and I understand where Wizards has been kind of mum on it, and I hope that this is because they're mum because they're going to do something like cray-cray at the next Pro Tour, or this could just be like, well, Twitch paid some money to get them exclusively, and that's kind of the end of it.
Yeah, I don't understand. So this announcement, which I guess I'm going to post it in the Twitch, but I can never figure out how to post links in the YouTube, and I apologize for that. But this is just your classic press release. It says nothing.
There's a lot of platitudes. There's a lot of good feelings.
There's a lot of good feelings. There's comments from a Twitch higher up person. There's comments from random people, but it doesn't say anything. So all that this means to me is that when the stream goes down on Twitch now, I won't be able to go to the more reliable YouTube stream.
Exactly.
The comments or the chat on Twitch is much more preferable. No offense to the people watching on YouTube, but I'm just telling you that the Twitch chat for Pro Tours is significantly preferable to the YouTube chat for Pro Tours for a number of reasons. Primarily for me is that I just think that Twitch's interface is easier to use. But I don't understand what this announcement is really saying other than, hey, we've taken away an option from you.
Now, Aaron, you have spent some time recently doing some serious streaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you feel about all this and Twitch and WotC getting into bed together and whatnot?
So I think this is very interesting. So there's a portion of this review where this release where Helen says that we've had a strong relationship with Twitch for years, and this agreement will make our partnership stronger and push coverage to a new level. I find that very interesting because word on the street is that they just announced that GP Chiba, which is a big sold out legacy GP coming to Japan very soon, is not going to have English coverage. And so there were some people that were like, wait a minute, girl, you just said that you're going to enter this great new agreement and you're going to push coverage to a new level, but yet you have this massive sold out record setting legacy GP and you're not covering it. Like, what?
Right.
So some people were kind of calling shenanigans on that, which I thought was really funny. I'm for this for the most part. I think it gives them the opportunity for some better advertising, some more unique advertising opportunities, possibly a way to generate more revenue. If they are going to work on Twitch and make it as good as the YouTube stream, because like you said, the YouTube stream often doesn't suffer from the buffering and other things like that that the Twitch stream does. And so if you're going to make it as good as YouTube, I'm on board with it. You brought up the Twitch chat, and I do have to talk about this. Twitch chat is largely terrible, and so if you are going to have this and your intent is to get more viewers, I hope that they also intend on stepping up their mod game, where the mods that they do have, like Ian and Squirrel Loot, are fantastic. But as we've talked about on the show many times in the past, is mods can only do so much, and you need to have a number of mods proportionate to the number of viewers that you have. And so if you're planning on doing something to bring in more viewers, you also need to be able to keep them in check. Otherwise, Twitch chat, even just the SCG chat this weekend was terrible. I was watching Emma's games because Emma, shout out to Emma, made her first open top 8s.
Yay!
And I was there rooting her on, and chat was horrible. And so if the quality can be the same as YouTube, I'm all for this. And if they can rein in the chat, I'm doubly for it.
We got Squirrel Loot in our chat, by the way.
Squirrel Loot, love him.
He's not one of our mods, but our chats are great, right?
Our chats are the chattiest of all chats. So you're telling me,
jacket, it looks good on you though.
Hey,
right? Like that's what we're saying.
So you're telling me, Aaron, that you read a quote from Helen.
Oh no.
And then you don't. And then you don't. You know what?
God.
There's people out there who get joy and happiness because you are able to
people
impersonate
pay good
someone.
no money.
We are incredibly excited to work together to grow the viewership of Magic Premier Play events, and I need a big ring for that. So yeah, she's gonna have me assassinated one day for that. Just putting that out there. Like, I'm gonna go to a GP one day, and I'm gonna wake up like wrapped in bubble wrap on a plane to Syria, and you're never gonna hear from me again. Just throwing that out there.
You're just gonna feel the steel in the back. You know,
or it's gonna be like that
scene
in Urban Legends. We're gonna be walking to my car, and Helene will be under the car with a knife ring, and she'll just slash my ankle or something. It's gonna be intense.
They'll come and get you.
But this announcement does nothing. I don't understand why this announcement even came out. Why even announce this? And also for the English language, there won't be an English language stream. I don't know what China's deal is, but of course there's Nico for Japan.
And they are, as far as I understand it, they are covering that. Is that not correct?
I mean, I believe Nico is, and I don't know what China's equivalent is for that. I feel like they have got like 5 or 6 different companies that stream events in China, and so I don't know which one will be for Chiba. Or if multiple will be for Chiba. But can Americans? I honestly don't know the answer to this question. So if either of you guys or anyone in the chat knows, can Americans use Nico
yes.
or the Chinese streaming service in the United States to watch?
The Chinese, I don't know, but I have pulled up Nico successfully. If you try hard enough, you can get there.
Yeah, I feel like you need to make an account in Nico though.
I think because it's the Japanese Facebook. So yeah, you can't use Facebook without a Facebook account. You can't use Nico, and that's literally the extent of my knowledge, and that's probably not even correct in some fashion.
Yeah.
Youku is what I'm being told by the chat. Youku.
Okay.
So anyway, if you want to watch Grand Prix Chiba legacy action,
right? I mean, let's face it here, and I think a lot of people still may have the preconception that that streaming is a cheap and easy endeavor, when in fact it is expensive.
Streaming is
very
work.
difficult. It is serious work. People, it takes thousands and thousands of dollars to just get people places, let alone pay them for their time. Make sure you have the equipment, the resources, the internet, the lights, the cabling, the chairs, the desks, the monitors, the cameras, and all that stuff has to work.
Yep.
And people
and
have to know
every little thing that goes wrong.
Right. Mm-hmm. So, it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of money. Yep. So it's not like, I'm necessarily shocked at this, because it would have been, I feel, a bigger deal, and people would have been far more excited by seeing it happen, because it is kind of so remote that they're going to have live English streaming from an Asian Grand Prix, which is, I think, kind of big. Just like when Nico comes to like Pro Tours, or they come to any other Magic event. That's kind of a big deal, I can imagine, for Japanese players.
I hope that Magic is getting some amount of chunk of change to get this proprietary deal with Twitch, though. Like, that's the point that I'm hopeful for, is that they get something out of this that is tangible for the viewers. Because what they had before was nice. You could watch on YouTube, you could watch on Twitch, but it was just, they were releasing it into the wild, and it was a broadcast thing. Now there's a deal in place. I don't know what the topic, what the focus of the deal is. My assumption is that it's mostly money, so I hope that money is going to be used in a way that will improve the viewer experience going forward.
Right. So here's what they do.
Particularly because of the issues with Twitch in the past.
They take that money and they go buy better trophies. That's what they do. They go take the trophies and they chuck them. They do the pop, and they lay that up into the dumpster, and they set the dumpster on fire, and it goes whoosh. Magic dumpster, magic fiery dumpster, and they go buy new ones with all that Twitch money.
My level 7 druid cast magic fiery dumpster in the most recent D&D session.
Magic Fiery Dumpster is the name of my punk band.
Wow. I was thinking of you, though. I was thinking of you when I was watching the World Magic Cup coverage, because they would pan over the trophies and be like, 4 players have a chance at these trophies. That's my bad Rich Hagen impression. But
I thought that was just a different Helene impression.
Right, just a weird one.
That's the one with no coffee. But no, so they'd pan over the trophies, and I was like, oh God, Evan must be rolling over in his bed right now, just because how hideous those trophies were. And I was like, oh God.
Luckily, I was doing other things other than dying inside to watch a giant gummy bear-esque thing that was molded out of the fires of St. Haribo, and I'm good. I'm okay. I'm gonna live my life, and they can have whatever trophies they want. It's fine.
Look, it's never going to be a problem for you, Evan. You're never going to have one of them in your house, so it's not an issue.
Well, that's pretty big words coming from somebody who was never on the Community Cup or the Community Super League.
Okay, Aaron, please. I just healed those scabs. Those had just healed. They had like, I'll have to go get the Neosporin, I guess.
Man, I was over here looking up burn centers. Now, next up, the Judge promo. The Judge promo showed up again. Now, the Judge promo program. Now it's weird now because you can't just give judges promos. They have to gift it to other judges in a way that stops, some sort of law being broken. But regardless, now the judges get their promos showered upon them by the magic above them of the levels. And this time it's Imperial Seal. And that's a pretty big deal. Mm-hmm. I'm going to keep rhyming it like wheel, but sometimes we steal. But I feel that this is a really good deal. All right. So Imperial Seal is the new judge promo. This thing is worth a whole lot of money. This is the first reprinting. Is that correct?
I believe so.
I don't believe there were any other printings.
Chat will correct us as soon as we're wrong, though.
I know. As soon as those words leave my mouth, someone is like, "But Devin, nope." All right. So it was in MTGO Masters Edition 2. Okay. It was in Portal 3 Kingdoms, and it looks like this is the only other option. Now, the Portal 3 Kingdom version right now is like oh my God.
$570 according to MTG
it's
Goldfish.
$570. Man.
Dollars?
Yeah, TCG Player Mid is $570, eBay $650,
Yeah.
That's a high number.
Yeah.
That's seriously, that's it. So yeah, Imperial Seal is now the one of the sweetest judge promos ever. This is the one that you really, really want to be gifted in their super gifted magical program. This is the one. You're like, it's cool, there's other ones, but this one, I want Imperial Seal. So how you guys feel about something this expensive being turned into a promo that is, going to be, it's going to be quite a car payment for somebody or rent payment, be able to get
sure
a nice television out of that thing.
Promo from the RPTQs or the GPs. I mean, like if you're going to do a promo, do a promo. And I think this is how you do promos right. I'm all for it.
How long has it been since we went off on the relationship between the Judge program and Magic the Gathering?
It's been a little while.
It's been a while now.
It's been
long-time fans of the show.
Yeah.
And longtime followers of my Twitter account will know that I have gone off on the relationship between WotC and the MTG Judge program before. Part of that, a very small sector of that, is the promo program in which Wizards of the Coast prints their own Disney dollars to hand to their volunteers that they pay, like how
they're fun volunteers. They're funneteers.
Funneteers that don't get paid money at all, except for here's $600.
And here's some product.
I think that irregardless of the politics of the situation, I love that they went really deep to find this one. It's a card that, while it's expensive, it's not super highly played. And I think that's important, is because when you print Judge promos that become legacy staples as 4-ofs, you run into a big problem. You run into supply and demand issues that you wouldn't otherwise have. And so I really like that they found Imperial Seal to be the option here. I think that it's a great reward for the judges who receive it. I think that it's also a way to introduce more Imperial Seals into the bloodstream, just in case Storm becomes more of a thing in the future. Things like that. Then I'm excited that it's I'm excited to see them in person as well. Is the other thing, is I love the coloration of the Judge promos.
Sure.
And so, irrespective of everything else, I love this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad. I mean, just to be clear, I'm all about rewarding the judges. They are easily the unsung heroes of the entire Magic the Gathering community. And, to have lived through the Oath of the Gatewatch kind of, tumble and fall, and what is often seen as sort of like, a very sort of contentious relationship with the Judge program and the people in it and how they reacted, and when people were trying to do good and report things and they got burned for doing so, and for all of that kind of animosity to have existed, And then something like this happens, which, again, I think is a huge, huge gift to all those people who work so hard.
Yes.
I'm glad for that. Now, at the same time, you can still talk about how there's like sort of Disney bucks, and there's the way that Wizards isn't actually paying for people. They're just kind of giving them a thing.
Someday there will be a day of reckoning when they have to. Someday that is going to be a thing they're going to have to deal with. Today is not that day, and so because today is not that day, I'm just happy that judges get to have a cool card that is worth a lot of money.
There you go.
Well done on all accounts for this card.
All right, so speaking of things that are well done, how about things that are not super, super well done? Let's look at the top 32 of the StarCityGames.com Knoxville, Tennessee Open. Thank you very much. In my neck of the woods, unfortunately couldn't make it. I was in Texas, but it's fine. So the Knoxville Open happened, and the top 32 had an 81% makeup of blue-white Flash and green-black Delirium. I think this is the part where you say, hey, look, there's a tier up there, and I think it's the first one, and on top of it is blue-white Flash and green-black Delirium. Weird. Because 47% of that top 32 was green-black Delirium. That's 15 decks. So, 15 of the top 32 was green-black Delirium. A whole bunch of the rest was blue-white Flash and some smattering of other decks that basically weren't those two. So suddenly, as it is, Standard's crap now, right? We were rotating it too fast just a couple weeks ago. A couple weeks ago, we had to put the brakes on and be like, hey, we know you guys are upset because Kaladesh or, because Shadows of Innistrad is going to leave really soon. Don't worry. Things are going to stick around forever, just like they used to. And if there's a format problem, you're just going to have to get used to it. Well, now Standard sucks because, Standard is like just these things and it's done and it's solved and we're here. Brian DeMars wrote an article on Channel Fireball talking about what's the matter with Standard. And I'm not going to cover every point of his, but I'll cover a few points I wanted to point out before I hand it off to you guys. Now, whether there's a drop-off in new players, I can't say. Now, I'm sure Wizards knows, and, who knows how they're sort of combating that, if that is an issue. But I don't know, so I don't want to speak to that. However, Standard is solved too quickly. Quote, unquote. We've been here so many times because, how many times have we had the conversation of there has to be the best? Something has to be the best. There is going to be a combination of cards that through millions of players all over the world, grinding out one of the best game design systems ever, that you're going to be able to find usually what is the most efficient at winning the game in said format, particularly in that format that doesn't have a lot of cards. I mean, yeah, Standard's got a couple thousand or even 1,500, but that's not a ton. And you're not going to be able to rotate your format fast enough because you tried that. You made a big deal out of that and you tried to explain it to everybody. And when it finally came time to pull the trigger, you were like, oh, sorry, you guys didn't really like that. Oops, we only planned on this for 2 years. But now we've got this problem, quote unquote, which we can have a lame duck format. We can have a format where Collected Company wouldn't have rotated. We can have a format where Rally the Ancestors would have stayed in Standard and caused a ridiculous amount of mess, kind of like it was doing when it was in Standard. Now, one of his next thoughts was the Standard has become all about the cards, not the decks. And when you have a design and when you have cards that are just better than what you have in common, when you have mythic cards that are supposed to be some of the highest power tier things that you're doing in a format, turns out those are some of the best things you can be doing in a format. And so Smuggler's Copter, notwithstanding, which I think is kind of an aberration because they didn't really know how good vehicles were and they wanted to make sure they were good. Well, oops, they're ridiculous and they're seeing vintage play, for God's sake. You can have aberrations like that, but ultimately this is what Wizards has designed. This is the bed that they have made, and this is the one we're lying in. And we'll talk a little bit about hate cards later, but just on those 2 points and the fact that now Standard's crap because, oh my God, we have tier 1 decks and isn't the end of the world happening. Yes, Modern has been a little bit more popular, but Modern's always been more popular. I don't know if you noticed, but Modern's been the one who's usually set all the records. It's certainly not Standard. Aaron?
Right.
Yeah, Brian brings up some interesting points. And, I think one of the things that I really touched on was he mentioned standard has become about cards and not decks. And the feeling that, they're making the cards, you almost feel forced into playing them, or you almost feel browbeaten into playing these cards because they're so obviously good. And there is such a gulf, or there is such a distance between the smugglers, copters versus everything else. And I feel like in other sets, you were able to see the gap was smaller, where there wasn't such a big difference between, this mythic or this rare. Whereas now it's like, if you're playing white, you should be playing Gideon. You really should be. If you're playing black, you have no reason to not be playing Liliana, the Last Hope. And if you're pretty much, you can put Smuggler's Copter in anything, to be quite honest. You're seeing madness strategies, you're seeing zombie strategies, you're seeing blue-white Flash. I play Delirium, so I've been facing a lot of Flash lately as I try to prepare for the Invitational in a couple of weeks. And, one of the reasons that I think Modern is so popular right now is because there are so many of these good cards, where it's like you're not just stuck with a finite number of good cards, you really can play anything. And people just feel like, I feel like in Modern, the differences in your matchups are smaller than they are in Standard, where, you can play anything you want in Modern. You've got a pretty good shot about most things. The weaknesses aren't so glaring as they are in Standard, if that makes any sense. Whereas in Standard, it feels like all the decks right now have really big holes. I was thinking of playing the red-black zombie list with Smuggler's Copter and the Madness mechanics, but it has like no Delirium game at all. And you can't take a deck into a big event that has its worst matchup be one of the top 3 decks. You just can't. And so because the weaknesses are so glaring, you can't really try to play these other decks because you're going to have no chance.
Rubes?
I have so many thoughts, Evan.
You have thoughts? Are they real?
Okay. They're real thoughts. I have so many feelings just swirling around my heart and my brain right now. So here are a couple of them. So the current problem of people feeling like Standard is stale is, I think, a little bit. First of all, it's a little bit overblown in my opinion. Although the data points here do suggest that there is a problem with these 2 decks, but it's still 2 decks instead of 1, which is 1 more. If my math is correct. And also, this is just 1 data point. This is 1 tournament. This is 15 rounds. The metagame shifts. You could say that it sucks this week, and then maybe it changes next week. I think that for this particular metagame, the problem is primarily with the cards as opposed to the decks. Smuggler's Copter is a real problem that they didn't see coming, that we discussed for a while after the Pro Tour. Gideon, ally of Zendikar. I saw a tweet today that said that a Gideon costs more on Magic Online than the rest of the set combined.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is a ridiculous statistic.
A playset, I believe. A playset costs.
Is it a playset costs more?
I believe so.
Sure. Still.
Okay, still the whole friggin' set, sure.
Than the rest of the set. I think that, and this has been a problem that we've had for a little bit. I think it's a little bit of a holdover of people being tired of the Coco and the Rally metagames, where those 2 decks just sort of took over and no one could do anything about it. I think that, Magic is trying to do so many things at the same time. It's trying to have fun, interesting mythics that aren't the only important cards. It's trying to be fun for limited, so you have to have a lot of cards, maybe even the bulk of a set be relevant in limited. Sure. You're also trying to have it be open to new players and having an easily accessible format that's still interesting and fun and cost effective and good for limited. Like, you're just pulling in so many different directions. And I'll tell you, my biggest thought is, you know what? I'm sorry, Aaron. This is what happens when you don't have a cheap red aggro deck. This is what happens.
This is what you get.
This is what you get. You didn't want to have, Foundry Street Denizens. You didn't want to have 2 1s for 1 in red. You didn't want to have Tom Ross winning every Standard Open. This is what happens when you nerf red deck wins. Is the cards? It just becomes an amalgamation of good cards. When you get rid of things like red deck wins, when you get rid of efficient answers like Lightning Bolt or Hero's Downfall, it just devolves into 3 mana base, good cards. What shell allows me to play the most of these cards on time? That's what happens to Standard. It's what happens to all formats. And so I think that, we just need. I'm telling you, our savior is going to be Foundry Street Denizen. I'm just telling you. That's
our
where we're
savior
at.
is in the mountains.
Sorry, it just is. This is just where we are. I'm telling you. This is really why I preach at the mountain of red mana. This is why Patrick Sullivan is my page. I have a little pendant that has Paul Sly on it underneath my shirt.
Nice. I just need the wind whipping. I need Patrick Sullivan like in the Nebuchadnezzar pose with the staff, and he's got the beard going because he's been in the mountains for so long, just waiting to come down.
I have returned, coming in 2017. Black screen starring Patrick Sullivan, and Edward James Olmos.
I mean, I think that's valid. I think also too, because I have been doing so much testing of standard lately, in my experience, I still find it to be quite diverse. I know I kind of went into my testing thinking it was going to be that way and almost kind of hoping that it was. I had my plan for Flash, I had my plan for vehicles, and I have to say personally, I've been quite surprised in the leagues that I've played and in the FNMs that I've gone to, in that I have been seeing the Jeskai controls, the red-blue energies. Marvel, Aetherworks Marvel is making a comeback because it destroys Delirium, things like that. And so, I agree with you in that there isn't enough data. I think that we are seeing, this was a 400, 500 person tournament. And so we are seeing, what was that? The top 32 was that?
Yeah.
That you had. Okay. So, I'm anxious to see what was 45. What was 57.
This is a subset of a subset. This is definitely not a full picture.
Yeah, and I mean, it is sort of a rock, paper, scissors format, and so, there is the variance of who you got paired up against, and, I'd just like to see some more information. I think that you're onto something, but I don't think we can declare it a failure or declare it terrible at this stage. But I love your point about the red, though, Ruben. I think you are right about that.
I think there is
we had mono white for a while. We had mono white keeping everybody in check. The problem is, and it's the classic problem with mono white, is it can't finish anything. Like you get them down to 3 and then they stabilize and then they're not dead anymore. Whereas with red, you at least have burn spells. And white's sort of gotten past that a little bit. But the other problem is that people were like, oh, let's just play this mono white shell, but then 2 other colors with it. And then it's just the same problem all over again.
Yeah,
so.
Sure. There's no room for Lightning Bolt right now, and blue-red with Lightning Bolt would probably be pretty ridiculous right now based on the options that they have.
There are a couple other things that could help. I mean, we haven't had Wizards has tried to get combo to not be a thing in standard, which I understand. I get that things like Mind's Desire shouldn't be a standard card. But you should do something in standard because you miss part of the rock, paper, scissors, whatever you want to do. Dude, you're taking out the scissors and then you just have rock.
This magical construct that we have formed in our minds that the rock, paper, and scissors are these 3 things is a creation.
Evan, I'm an old man who's been around since the beginning.
And so am I. And what I'm explaining is that I just can't imagine a world where we're like, yes, anyone who has only played this game for less than even a year, hey, here's this thing that they're doing in competitive play. They're doing this loop. They're drawing these cards. They're making this mana. They're abusing this interaction, and suddenly their opponent is dead. Like I can't imagine a world where we want that to happen because when it did happen, it felt really dumb and awkward and hard to explain and almost embarrassing.
Well, this sounds like a segue into a discussion about hate, Evan.
It really does because our friend Saffron Olive, he's awesome.
And can I just say, I have to get this off my chest. Saffron Olive, listen here. He has this knack for making really pesky decks. Like when I go to a GP or I go to an open and I lose to something so off the radar to where I've never heard of it and I don't know what it is. When I'm on the car ride home and I'm complaining, you know what my friends always say to me? Because I always say, well, what is this? Who plays this? And they're like, Saffron Olive wrote about it last week, actually. And so stop making these pesky decks that I have to face and get creamed by.
Oh, it's terrific. You know it is.
My favorite thing about Saffron Olive is when he's like, check out this $10 deck, and then I look it up and it's 35 tickets already.
Oh yeah, like he has a profound impact on people. Even just the cards that they buy, the decks that they build, they play these decks, and then I lose to them. Yeah, so hashtag blame Seth needs to be a thing. Anytime you lose to some freak ass deck, it's probably a Seth creation.
It's probably Seth's fault, but that's okay because we live in a world now where we have the professor and we have Saffron, who I think is just absolutely killing it in writing articles, and and we're a better community to have these people in it. And
especially if you're going to talk about a really stale standard, God bless him for at least trying. It would be very easy for him to sort of join the dog pile and say standard is terrible. But no, he's going to give you a mono red Panharmonicon list. Like, he's going to do his part to keep you playing and keep you interested. And God bless him. I mean, I don't want to face the decks, but God bless him.
So a week and 1 day ago, which is like 12 years ago in Magic player terms, he wrote an article called "The Importance of Hate and Hosers in Standard," where he kind of speaks where Magic has come from. Now, back in the day, back in the McDizzle, we had Winter Orb, which was a horrible card that just brings no fun. But wait, there's Stasis. Stasis, I love Stasis. Someone threatened to hurt me one time because I was playing Stasis. Still played Stasis. Because that's what you do. You punish them. You make them sad. You use Time Elemental and Sarah Angel, and you kill them. Anyway, and but then it kept going. There was Boil. There was there was of course Armageddon,
Flash Fires, Tsunami, Death.
Absolutely.
What was the
Karma? There was Karma.
Karma, Justice, Perish. I mean, there was some really just unfair anarchy.
Absolutely.
Like, there were just stuff that was completely unreasonable.
Right. There would be cards that would just destroy all islands, destroy all planes. Like, they would just wreck your face. It's not just like, I hate what you're doing and I'm kind of messing with your strategy. It's like, no, you stop playing Magic now because you're playing the wrong kind of land. So, moving forward, we had this format called Standard, in which Mirrodin was in it. And then Darksteel showed up. And then everything fell apart. And at some point later, it was acknowledged and discussed that even if they had chocked Mirrodin full of sort of shatter-like effects, there was no Shatter Storm. They didn't want Shatter Storm to completely shut off the entire Affinity mechanic, because Affinity was what made Mirrodin cool, and isn't Mirrodin awesome, and doesn't everybody love Affinity? Oops, we totally should have put Shatter Storm in there because, oh my god, the format's ruined and everybody hates us, and Kataki Wars wage, and friggin' Saviors or whatever,
way too late.
You're just way, way, way too late. So suddenly we've got hate for everything, and not just like hate, but just like really targeted Tormod's Crypt, Relic of Progenitus type stuff. You have abilities to get rid of graveyards when Snapcaster Mages and Burial Rites are hanging out, and that's good. Grafdigger's Cage was like the right card to show up at the right time. Even Rest in Peace and Return to Ravnica. There was ways that they kind of kept saying you can have fun, but there's ways out of it. And what he kind of notes is it feels like there's just less and less of that. And at some point, he gets to the point where he kind of says that he thinks that Wizards is actually hating on the hate cards because new players could get upset if their strategies get shut down or whatever. I can't really believe that, because I've known many developers over the years, and I understand that they understand that you can't let something go too crazy for too long. Now, what I've also noticed from developers from talking over the years is that they want you to be able to play with your toys for a little while. Like, when something's good, it's okay if it's good as long as it's not good for too long. And normally too long is around a set release. So we're going to get to go nuts now with graveyard stuff because Delirium hasn't really been hated out. And they didn't really give us much of a good answer to Delirium decks currently. But if there's not some stopgaps in either Revolt to stop Ring Black Delirium and to disrupt Blue White Spirits, we could really start to have a very negative sort of downturn, very sort of closed view on what Standard is, and this is all Standard is, and either you play this deck or that deck or this thing that hates on maybe one or the other, and that's all you got. So there used to be a lot of hate. I lived in that world, and to be honest, it wasn't the end of it, but I can understand how it was better when you kind of focus on it. But also, you have the Blood Moons. Like, is Blood Moon okay? Blood Moon exists in Modern. Is that all right? Because it's kind of unfair, and it kind of shuts down entire strategies, entire decks. And is that what you want to push? Is that the is that the kind of the force of will? Some of the glue that holds Modern together is because you can hose out entire strategies with one little red card. Is that good for Magic? And do we need more hate back in Standard? I would argue we need a lot more hate back in Standard.
Yeah, I'm actually going to defend the hate too, which is funny because, I've been very vocal about my dislike for cards like Rest in Peace and Leyline of the Void and Grafdigger's Cage. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. At the end of the day, I know that we need those cards because I know that I play broken things and that if those things didn't exist, yeah, I would run over you, quite frankly. And so, as much as I might complain about them, I understand why they're there. And I understand why Deathrite Shaman's there. And I understand why Leyline is there. And I understand why Relic Progenitus is there. And, I couldn't help but think about that when I was reading Brian DeMars's article, and he was talking about how Rally of the Ancestors was able to dominate and how Collected Company was able to dominate. And I think if we look at it like a pendulum, I don't think we need to go back to a time of Armageddons and boils and chokes, but I also think that we need to do better than really narrow answers like Hollowed Moonlight, even Anafenza. I remember watching at Grand Prix Oakland, watching the coverage from Oakland, and somebody slamming down an Anafenza like, well, I have the answer, and then just bringing Sidisi's Faithful and just making it seem like nothing. And so, the answers that we've been given are either so narrow or just don't do anything to where these decks are able to completely overpower them and as if you didn't even have them. And so, I can agree that we don't want to go back to a time. And Saffron also brings up, new players that, new players don't want to come to a game where they can't do anything. They don't want to see a game where your islands don't untap or where, you can't play spells this turn. But I would also argue the opposite too. They don't want to go into a format where they feel like there's nothing they can do, where you just get to watch me make Ishkanas every turn, or you get to watch me, spit out an Emrakul with my Marvel works. They want to know that there's something they can do. And so if we really are going to be concerned about new players, I think there's a way to please both. And, I think that there needs to be better hate. I just don't think it needs to be on the extreme that we're used to. But I think that may be part of the reason why we're here is because everything we have is just not very good.
So, Ruben, do you feel the hate flow through you?
Yes,
Do you feel it?
This feels like the hater's ball. No, yeah, I mean, I think that you guys bring up some good points. I think that returning to the days of gloom and karma is a bad idea, but certainly Flash Freeze or Dark Betrayal, like there are ways to print efficient, like specific hate cards, and make the metagame more interesting as a result of those cards being in them. I think that the mono black mirror, for example, from Theros, would be significantly less interesting if Dark Betrayal didn't exist. So I think that the blanket statement that we can't print new targeted or pigeonholed specific hate cards is a rule that's really handcuffing design. I think that something along the lines of, not necessarily needing Rest in Peace, for example, but something like Tormod's Crypt, I think is a perfectly reasonable... Ground Seal is another good example. Yeah, exactly. So you can have cards that fight against specific strategies and still have that strategy succeed. It just requires not only the player of the hate card to be more creative in the way that it's playing and attack on different angles, but also the deck that's being targeted to attack on different angles. If you're doing something very specific, then you need to know what kind of cards you need to fight against. There are these cards that still exist in Modern, for example, and people still like playing Modern and have... if you're a Dredge player, you know that all these hate cards exist. If you're playing Affinity, you know that all these hate cards exist, but you have these stopgap solutions to be able to fight around a Shatterstorm, to be able to fight around a Vandal Blast, to be able to fight around a Stony Silence if you're Affinity. So, it's not necessarily the end-all, be-all to just remove them from the format. So,
I mean, there used to be really interesting cards like Celestial Purge. Remember Celestial Purge?
Yeah.
That card was sweet. A white and a generic mana for an instant that exile target black or red permanent. That's a really important distinction. It's not just creature. It's not just, enchantment or whatever. Like, it is permanent. Anything red, anything black goes away. That's awesome. Super powerful.
Yeah. In very specific circumstances. That's exactly the kind of thing.
Well, even the cycle that you mentioned, when you had Gainsay, Glare of Heresy, Dark Betrayal, that whole cycle was fantastic. And that was something that was, it was narrow enough to where you really couldn't splash it, but it also dealt with a lot of things. And I thought that whole thing was great.
Right, and I think that there's really, I mean, that to me is where you start seeing sort of the rock, paper, scissors of how do you make your sideboard, what are you prepared against, how many dark betrayals do you play, do you really think, you need 4 for this tournament, that type of thing, excuse me. How many Celestial Purges you play in your white decks or whatever. Like that was, you had those different options, and when they came up in play, it was like, when did they use the Dark Betrayal? When did they use Celestial Purge? What are they going to use it on? Like, what is the most important thing in this match? What is the most important thing in this particular game here? And that's the way they played it. That to me is far more interesting than like, well, we ain't got any graveyard hate right now, so good luck with that Delirium. Like, that's just really annoying and just seems strange.
So like, there are cards that exist that are like Loaming Shaman. Right? 2 colors and a green, 3/2. I think it was from Dissension.
Yep.
Target player shuffles some number, like you choose any number of cards from target player's library and shuffle those back into their deck. Would that be completely unreasonable as a hate card right now? No.
Yeah.
That's a perfectly reasonable card.
Yeah, like a memory's journey type effect. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that some amount of hate is necessary, and not doing it leads to decks that aren't combo decks, but are these sort of like amalgamations of good cards that can create these engines, things like Coco and things like Rally of the Ancestors, taking over Standard. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll have to go home and put some water in Buck Nasty's mama's dish.
Buck Nasty.
Buck Nasty's mama's dish.
Is that supposed to be your Billy Bob Thornton?
No, that was my hater's ball.
Oh,
Come on, man.
Wow. Oh, also,
nobody watched Chappelle's show.
Also, Greece won the World Magic Cup, by the way.
Great.
Yay!
As Owen said, Greece is decent.
Wow.
Yeah,
I was rooting for Italy myself. I'm a big fan of the Gucci, and they were running some ad nauseum shenanigans, and I was completely
for the back-to-back.
Yeah.
Wow. And so if you like their hair, you would root for the Gucci mane, right?
Wow. Aggressive and amazing, and I love you.
While we're talking about mains, though, let's talk about Gabby Sparks' hair. She was gorge, as always. I was just like, Gabby just slays everything. She's like the Beyonce of Magic. She's Our Lady of everything. She looked fantastic, and I was like, yes, Gabby, yes.
Slay is another one that would be a good hate card.
Slay would be a fantastic hate card to come back. So with the World Magic Cup, the only thing I sort of saw about it, because again, I was at the convention, wasn't able to pay too much attention. However, there's a weird structure involved that, some teams kind of had more points than others, or some people had more points because of like buys and things, but the people who kind of earned them, that's kind of how the tiebreakers kind of fall. But it was just kind of a weird structure, was sort of what I sort of saw the rumble of.
Canada had 19 points and was knocked out. Macedonia had 16 and advanced over them, because final standings are based on day 1 play or something.
Yeah, I read quite a bit of feedback on this. There was a really good article at mtgmintcard.com. They have a column called Holistic Wisdom, and they were talking about, there was a young man named Chapman Sim, and he wrote 4 observations of the World Magic Cup, and he was talking about how, there was a weird emphasis on Team Sealed, which he thought was kind of unusual, and that nobody really prepared for, to be quite honest. And then the seating mattered more than you thought. So there was this weird thing where, if you decided that Infect was for seat A, it had to stay in seat A. You can have different players play that deck, but you couldn't move Infect to seat B or seat C. And so that led to some really odd variants where, like, if you got unlucky enough to sit in front of Infect or something like that, and it was just really strange. And a lot of people commented that the seating and the matchups mattered a lot more than the people actually playing them. And it seemed like there were an awful lot of turn 2 kills on camera from what I was seeing. Which is very,
it's a good healthy
you're
format.
At we won't go there, but you're at the pinnacle of coverage and you're seeing these fantastic teams and these epic, and it's over so quickly.
So we're gonna, so congratulations to Greece. High five there.
Yeah, well done.
We're going to move on to something that happened 12 days ago. I looked this up to make sure sort of how long it had been, because again, anything 12 days ago feels like, last year sometime.
Forever.
For Magic players. But we had a few pros who kind of, had some pretty big announcements, and it's wonderful. It's sort of these awesome 100% positive things. I love 100% positive things. It's always great. Huey Jensen, Hall of Famer, well-known commentator, and all-around good man, had a little announcement that he posted up on Twitter. And he mentioned that he'd spent a lot of time over the past few years trying to take control of his life and be happier and healthier. And there's one thing that he hadn't done. And after the events of this week, which was the election and things, very challenging for himself, it feels really bad to be silent and watch a system in which people literally rise to power by oppressing minorities and preying on groups of people that are perceived to be weak. And that being said, he said, I am gay. I think being open and honest and true to myself is the best thing I can do, given the current state of affairs. I love you all. And of course, who doesn't love the William Jensen? Who can't love something like this? This is, all positive, all great. I highlighted a comment that I saw on Reddit of a guy who was like, I haven't come out. He hadn't come out to his play group because he felt, weird. It just wasn't right. There was no, there wasn't really a role model, and now there is a role model, and I think that is sweet. This is one of those like, you're proud of your friend, love the dude. Wish I could give him a hug. We'll give him the internet hugs. But even if I know it's kind of old news now, because again, the speed at which magic travels. However, it is important, I think, that we bring it up. And Aaron, I can only imagine how impactful that thing was when you read it.
I thought it was fantastic. I've been a huge advocate for saying that representation matters. We say it over and over again. At GP Dallas, there was a trans judge. And on the Reddit, there's a subreddit called /AskTransgender, which is not a magic subreddit. It's just a typical Reddit for transgender people. Somebody had made a post on there saying, I am at a Magic the Gathering event. I see a trans judge. Thank you for being you. You are stronger than I am for being yourself. And, I've literally, at every event I've been to this year, I have had at least one person come out to me as trans. Literally every event I've been to. And I've been to 6 or 7 GPs this year. And it makes such a big difference. Seeing somebody like Gabby in the booth, seeing me or Emma at events, it really does mean the world to people. And, this is a big deal. There are a lot of men who responded to Huey's tweet saying, I am a gay man from Alabama. I am a gay man from New York. I've never seen somebody like me out there before. And I also think it's wonderful because Huey doesn't necessarily fit, the gay stereotype, quite frankly. He's a very tall, masculine dude, and a lot of times, unfortunately, that stereotype does persist of, the gay men love Lady Gaga and they love, spray tans and things like that. And, here's somebody who sort of doesn't fit that narrative. And I think that's what people need to see. They need to see that you don't have to be just one type of gay man or one type of trans woman. They need to see that. And they also need to see somebody who's happy. He runs with people like Owen Turtenwald and Reed Duke. This is somebody who's commentator Hall of Fame. You can be gay and have a fantastic life. And I think there were just so many things unique to Huey's situation that I really hope people take some things away from, and it was just glorious. I was so happy. It wasn't even me, and I was thrilled.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Let it not also be forgotten that also Jacob Wilson also,
yes.
I'm not sure it came out, but certainly this is the first time, a little more subtle. This is the first time I've seen him post about it publicly on Twitter and on Facebook. But it is also worth pointing out that in the days I post election, most specifically, when most of the love was coming forth, that comment also came out. I'm not sure in relation to the whole timeline. Again, it's been 10 days since then. But it says a lot about the Magic community. I know that there's a lot of hate in a lot of communities, and the Magic community is not immune to it, as we've discussed. There are places, particularly online, that are not the friendliest. But Magic is a place that all weird kids go to play and go to hang out. And that's why I came here, is because I was a weird art theater kid who grew up playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I was very attracted to Magic the Gathering. And that's why I'm here, and that's why a lot of us are here. And we're all misfit toys coming together to play this beautiful game. And the fact that that Magic is welcoming, and that most of us try to be, at least. We're not perfect, but we try our best. We try our best. Look, I'm not necessarily a wizard with words all the time.
Word wizard, yes.
A word wizard. I'm not an English scientist. I kind of am, but
a little bit.
It's not that everyone knows exactly the right word to say, but we all feel. Most of us feel like we're family. Mm-hmm. And so even when there's a big announcement like this that can be very scary, coming out in any respect, be it coming out as a nerd, be it coming out as a fan of a different football team than your parents are, that can be scary, let alone coming out as gay, which is a whole nother level of pressure that I can only imagine.
It's a life-altering thing.
And to see the reaction is beautiful, and I'm just so happy that they're able to live and be themselves.
There you go. So for
I encourage everybody, if you have a safe space, Magic tends to be a pretty safe space, so you should feel welcome here.
Wow, we don't have a lot of time left. However, we're going to take these last 21 minutes and we're going to use them as best we can see fit. Now, there is one more absolutely 100% positive thing, and I really enjoy 100% positive things, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is a very special promo that showed up today. The Thopter Pie Network. Yes! A parody of Thopter Pie Network. It is a 2 blue, 2 generic mana mythic enchantment, and the fact that it is only given out as a Wizards holiday promo to people who work at Wizards, people who help Wizards out in certain ways, contract with them, do work for them, so on and so forth. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you're eating, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. Use food to represent the token. And whenever a creature token you control dies, if it's represented by food, eat it. Yes.
Don't have to tell me twice.
So the picture, if you can't see it,
that's what I do already. Yeah,
is a Thopter machine literally carrying a giant pie with a rainbow in the background. It's beautiful amongst the Kaladesh skyline. And the flavor text being, they all thought her dream was just pie in the sky.
Aww.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this card, real quick. Sorry. First of all,
so much pie.
1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creatures, guys. We did it. We finally got our cards for our tokens that we're getting someday. 2, there's a rainbow in the art, and the artist Victor Adame commented that he saw his chance of painting a rainbow in a Magic card and he took it. So
I would too.
It's great. And I have a quick story I wanted to tell about a time when I used food in a game of Magic. So I was watching like a 6-player EDH game where Eric Klug was playing his like absurdist deck, and he played Goblin Game, and he needed objects, and I was just eating a box of blueberries, and I just threw my box of blueberries into the middle of the table.
Oh my god!
To just use, they're like, we don't have objects. Ploop, and just like a big box of blueberries appeared. It was great. So that's my food item.
And then they used blueberries, and then they ate them afterwards, and it was a wonderful time.
They got to use them in the game and then had some blueberries.
Oh.
But aren't blueberries kind of messy? Like,
yeah, there's a box. It was a plastic box.
Don't ruin it.
Aaron, please.
How you gotta ruin it? You had a beautiful story about very messy berries, but we weren't gonna focus on that. And here we are.
Were sleeved.
So, look, you know what? Real quickly, I wanted to note that, and we're going to move. Here's how fast we're going to do this. Gather the Townsfolk is the official second segment of the show, 57 minutes in. Desert Bus, you guys did an amazing job. Over 600 grand raised. Unbelievable. Fantastic. The community showed up. I think they did an amazing job. Limited loading ready run. You guys are unbelievable. So.
And if you have a chance to go watch Alex's speech at the end, I'm going to link it in the chat. Save this for later. It's beautiful. You guys will love this. You don't have to watch it right now, but I'm just going to paste it for you.
Fantastic. I really want to cover this. So we're going to go infinite. That's how fast Gather the Townsfolk went. Now we're going infinite. Now we're in our third segment. So there's custom Magic cards being made all the time. There's people who used to make Magic cards. When I was in school, back in the Dizzle, when the rocks were soft, I would make my own custom Magic cards.
The Mick Dizzle.
Oh yes, that's where you come from the mixed streets. That's where I bring it from. Is the mixed street. All right. But however, there is an entire subreddit now of custom Magic. That's the name of it, and they will post. From time to time, it doesn't seem actually that consistent, but from time to time, they'll post the top 5 submissions from the week in the Magic TCG subreddit. So the winner this week, I wanted to talk about because I think it's a card that is right up maybe some people's alley and could very well just be busted and broken in half. It's called Crumbling Library, and it is a land that says your maximum hand size is reduced by the number of charge counters on it. You tap to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool, or you tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and you put a charge counter on it. So, granted that I didn't really talk to you guys about this much in the pre-show about this, we're just getting these initial impressions. Ruben, how you feeling about Crumbling Library?
I mean, it's the best card I've ever seen for Lantern Control. It's the best card I've ever seen in my life for Lantern Control. It's an interesting
and
design.
why is that? No, I'm serious. Why is that?
Okay.
For people who don't understand.
People who don't know what Lantern Control, it's a modern deck that uses the card Lantern of Insight and cards that interact with the top cards of libraries, such as Ghoul Caller's Bell or Codex Shredder. But really, the reason why the deck is popular is because of a card called Ensnaring Bridge, which is 3 colorless mana, artifact originally printed in Stronghold, that was reprinted in 8th edition, and for some reason, 8th edition is in Modern. And the card says that creatures cannot attack you unless their power is equal to or less than the number of cards in your hand. So I am really looking forward to having no cards in my hand when I am a Lantern Control deck, and having access to all of my colors on turn 1, those being blue, black, and green. This even lets me tap for other colors out of sideboards if I wanted to play some other stuff, and this card is just ridiculous for that. So now, that's why this card would be good in that deck.
Aaron, now, as someone who plays a deck that may or may not want to limit hand sizes, so they may or may not want to discard cards, how would you feel about a card like this?
I just want to say, Ruben, that I was watching your feature match the other day, and I took so many screenshots of that, and I have footage of that. And so the next time,
I averaged 10 to 20 mistakes every game I played with that deck. That deck is so hard to play.
But the next time you poke fun at me for not liking interactive decks, I'm going to roll that beautiful bean footage, and we're going to watch you make day 2 with Lantern Control.
Okay. Sure. We'll talk about how many abrupt decays and discard spells I have in my actual real life interactive deck.
Actual real life interactive. Look, dude, you can be on the front box of Madden if you want to, because you're just carrying that pigskin.
I might even have it made into a T-shirt of Ruben Bressler and Lantern Control on top, just because I'm that petty.
Wow.
No, I love you, Rubes. You know that. No, so Crumbling Library is beautiful. First off, the art is fantastic. I don't know where they got this image from, but it's gorgeous. This kind of reminds me of Mana Confluence. I remember back in the day when Abzan Aggro was a thing in Standard, and Andrew Boswell wrote an article for Star City Games about how a card like Mana Confluence is really what makes that deck work, because the mana base is so terrible and you need so many colors of mana to curve into your Anafenza, into your Siege Rhino. And so you sometimes, some people would look at Mana Confluence and say, well, the price is too damn high because you're paying that 1 life every time. But if your goal is to get somebody dead very quickly, a drawback like having your hand reduced or having to take that 1 damage every time is sort of negligible. And so I think that's kind of how I feel about this, is it reminds me of Mana Confluence. Mana Confluence also being a card that Dredge likes. We are more than happy to have our hand be reduced to get some mana that we really aren't going to need very much. The cost of a reduced hand size isn't going to matter when we get to a certain point. We're not even really casting spells anymore. So I think this card is fantastic. I didn't really know much about this subreddit, but I may have to check it out a little more once I get my Reddit ID reinstated.
Well, you can make new ones. Anyway.
I can. So that's true.
You certainly have the power to make new ones. Now,
it's a cool card. This card's way too good.
Yeah, this card's probably busted as it is, and I don't know if it's actually doable, like with any numbers. If it doubles the charge counters, then that makes Dredge even better. So
they could just take out this tap out of colorless. I think that might be enough. But like even the most control-iest of control decks don't have 7 cards in their hand.
It's
ever.
Just. I mean, it's probably unfair and it's probably unprintable. It's just a nice thought experiment. I like thought experiments.
It's a cool idea.
So
yeah.
Right. So we were going to talk a little bit about, is Magic putting out too many expansions? Probably. But let's keep moving. Splash damage is next. And splash damage is where things are, hey man, I'm just answering questions. I'm just letting you know.
I just know what we're up against.
Here we go. Well, I wanted to move along so we could have this discussion because it's important. Because it means something. It means things. All right. So splash damage this week is when things relate to Magic but aren't necessarily Magic. Well, Dungeons and Dragons, one of the other large properties that Wizards has, and honestly has been seeing a huge resurgence, and they can thank Stranger Things for, I think, a lot of that.
As your local D&D nerd, I can let you know that Stranger Things is, while it's currently leading the way, it by no means started this.
No, of course not. I mean, this is Dungeons and Dragons is from the the early 70s or whatever onward.
Well, the resurgence, I mean. Even.
Sure. I mean, it began because 5th edition was really good, and I just think it's one of those things that kind of like it's a nice barometer of pop culture that Dungeons and Dragons is cool again, has always been sweet, but is now like getting actually really, really cool. And I can tell you, working at Cool Stuff Inc., like the D&D thing is happening, and people are excited about it, and they're playing again, and that's awesome. However, Dungeons and Dragons, awesomely enough, also got voted into the Toy Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
that's a thing. That's a real thing.
Yeah, first of all, that's a thing. Second of all, congratulations.
Yeah.
Right. So way to go, Dungeons and Dragons. They got there. Of course, the link isn't necessarily working for me right now, which is why I'm glad I pulled it up earlier. So the National Toy Hall of Fame inducts a few games every year. A few toys, if you will, every year. And so when you go to this list and you begin looking at who was inducted alongside Dungeons and Dragons, one of the greatest games ever made. I expect, Magic the Gathering to be here soon. However, you have Fisher-Price Little People. Okay.
That came in this year. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
We're cool,
I definitely agree with that. Those are
people, and they
a big part of my childhood.
Yeah, I was there. I played with that stuff. It was great.
I used to like putting them each on my fingers and having a handful of little people.
Of course, and you could talk to them and name little names.
Yeah.
But alongside these two is the swing.
The swing.
The swing.
Yes.
The put the ropes on the tree and your butt on a plank. Swing.
The swing. Got it.
I just can't imagine a kid tearing downstairs, ripping open that package, and there's the swing in the box.
Yeah.
They're like, Mom, can I have the new Nintendo Swing? Could you get that for me? Okay, so Ruben, can you explain a little bit about not just this year's, but maybe some of the previous years'
sure.
lauded toys?
Sure. The first class of the Toy Hall of Fame included things like the Erector set, Play-Doh. These are Monopoly, marbles even. Like those are, okay, I'm perfectly fine with Crayola crayons and Barbie. That was your opening class of the Toy Hall of Fame.
You got it.
The next couple years, you had stuff going in like playing cards, like a deck of cards. You had the Game Boy, the Nintendo Game Boy, the ViewMaster, this thing. They had a little 3D picture.
I had one of those. Yeah.
Sure, I'm on board with all of that. They started getting a little weird at some point. Like things like the skateboard started making their way in, which I'm not sure that counts as a toy. Like we got the rubber duck a couple years ago. But then you look at this list. Inducted in 2015, the puppet. Inducted in 2009, the ball.
Not even like a special kind of ball.
No, just the ball.
Yeah, it took 11 years to get the ball.
It took 11 years to get to the ball.
The ball had to wait.
Yes, the jump rope got in the third class. Not sure that counts. First of all, it got in after Lincoln Logs, but if you're counting it as a toy, okay, whatever.
But here we are in 2005 when the cardboard box showed up.
The cardboard box gets in 2005.
The cardboard box, ladies and gentlemen. Again, you run downstairs, you tear open the package. That is the present. The cardboard that you're looking at, that's the present.
Explanations, which really sell it because there's so many big words. Like if you click on cardboard box, it starts off with the Chinese invented cardboard in the 1600s.
Oh my God! It's
so wonderfully dry.
It's so bad. Now, okay, listen, we really hit peak ridiculousness in 2008.
Oh my God!
All right,
10 years.
In 2008, the Toy Hall of Fame inducted the stick.
The stick, ladies and gentlemen, the stick.
And I quote, hold on. The stick may be the world's oldest toy. Animals play with sticks. We use them to play fetch with our dogs. Children find sticks an endless source of make-believe fun. Sticks can turn into swords, magic wands, majorette batons, fishing poles, and lightsabers.
They poke their eyes out with them.
Children pretend with sticks. They cultivate their creativity and develop their imaginations. They explore as they search outdoors. This is ridiculous.
They're natural and free.
For just the right stick.
The stick. It took
I'm not
them
going to read the
10
rest of this because it's too much.
years.
But I need to end with the bottom here, which is the last sentence is sticks are not only possibly the oldest toys, they're possibly the best.
Oh,
Exclamation point.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I found really interesting. So mainly just like the years, there are certain toys that you would think would have been inducted before others. So for example, chess.
Yeah.
Chess has been around for what, hundreds of years? Not
Thousands.
Thousands. Was not inducted until 2013.
Yeah, I didn't get there.
So
but you know what was inducted in 2011?
The Easy Bake Oven, but the Easy Bake Oven was inducted in 2006. You inducted the Easy Bake Oven before chess?
Took another 5 years after the Easy Bake for the blanket.
Right. I mean, it's just
the
blanket.
The
also
blanket.
not a toy.
How is the blanket a toy? Yes, Bubbles. Bubbles was inducted in 2014.
At least
and
that's
even
respectable.
The blanket one, the blanket explanation is ludicrous. Children have played with blankets ever since ancient agrarians domesticated woolly animals and spun their coats for fabric.
Are we agrarian here? Is that what we're doing?
Like land before time stuff right there. Like, and some of these are oddly specific. So, for example, instead of just action figures, they have Star Wars action figures.
Star Wars action figures.
What
Which
makes so many
I
different-
get on a level because the Star Wars action figures relaunched. So Star Wars action figures, other than G.I. Joe, really, were the first time that toy companies really went for boys playing with what at the time were dolls. Okay. It was a real shift. So I get Star Wars specifically being narrowed down for that. It is still a little weird, but certainly no weirder than Blanket or Bubbles or Cardboard
blanket
Box.
thing just hurts my soul.
I mean, this could be a
makes
list
me
of
sad.
yeah, it's just absurd. And then Baby Doll in 2008, not even a specific doll, not a glowworm, not anything like that,
weird.
but just baby.
It is weird that they had Baby Doll, but then they had very specifically Star Wars action figures. Also, I like that Raggedy Ann got in 7 years before Raggedy Andy, which I really liked.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was 2002 to 2009.
Wow.
And then
He was her plus one.
That man had to wait.
There are a couple of toys that aren't in that stick out to me as odd that they aren't in. The first one being Go. Just isn't in the Toy Hall of Fame. How is Go
or Clue.
Go, Moncala,
Clue,
right?
I think are the big ones.
Yeah.
I mean, again, you could break it down to stuff like Pictionary. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Guess Who?
Well, I mean,
stuff that should be in,
charades. Right?
Charades. There you go.
Are we really? I mean, this is really what we're talking about. And then it's weird, look, it's Lionel trains. Really? Did they pay you for that, product placement in there? Because couldn't just be toy trains. Just couldn't be trains on the, on the track or whatever. Then we have the big wheel and the ball. The whole thing is kind of silly. However,
but we have a ball,
it's weird because
the ball in a cup is not far behind.
Well, yeah, the Kick the Can coming in 2017. That's an important one. But it's weird because we're lauding it because it's great that Dungeons and Dragons was recognized.
Absolutely.
It's weird it has to share it with the swing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Dungeons and Dragons and a swing,
these
are things that have the same lauding, the same.
I do
awards.
love that D&D got more votes. D&D was the high vote getter this year over the swing, which is nice.
In 2017, what are they going to be in 2017 there, Ruben?
Well, I mean, we had a couple ideas, but I think that realistically, we got to get Magic in.
Mm-hmm. You can do that,
right? Magic's going to get in. Magic. I mean, it created a genre.
Oh yeah.
There are a number of board games I think could get in. I think Sorry is a high likelihood.
Yeah, those little Peggy guys. Yeah,
with the little Peggy guys, it gives you the action of being able to knock guys.
Do you remember the Sorry commercial where it had all the guys in the big colored pawn suits and they'd bump each other off the board?
Love those.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's so those commercials were so 90s.
But what would we get in with them, man? What would happen there?
But if you're bringing in the swing and the blanket and the stick, I think that alongside Magic the Gathering and Sorry, you can induct your imagination. Right?
Your imagination was began when thought did.
Right.
Everyone is hearing the voice in their head right now.
Developed the mammalian brain in the early Triassic period.
Have you had thoughts and dreams? Everyone's had thoughts and dreams. We here at the Toy Hall of Fame know that thoughts and dreams are the things that drive people's hopes and fears.
Exactly. Yeah, it's so absurd. Yeah, I think that somewhere along the line they went from the Toy Hall of Fame to the things that made up my childhood Hall of Fame. A hippie took over in 2007. It was
it's like
no, and ball and stick.
And then there's that dude in the corner who's just like, blanket, bro, blanket, man, blanket.
And you're just like, Steve, go home.
Blanket, gotta
Take
itch.
your man
Blanket,
bun and go.
blanket, gotta stop. Blanket,
Yeah,
blanket.
D&D getting in is great.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Dude.
I'm a huge D&D nerd. You guys know that. I was recently talking with my parents because I'm back at home now. I've left Tales of Adventure for those of you that might have seen that. And for the time being, I'm living in my parents' house before I moved back out west. And they played D&D together before they dated. That's how, like, I stood no chance when it came to nerdiness. So we've been talking about maybe starting up a D&D game with probably my dad being the DM because he loves doing that stuff.
Sure.
And then try to get a group together, and I'm all about playing it. We'd probably play second edition because
The family that quests together stays together.
Right. So
and with that, we got to turn the corner to the finisher.
Absolutely.
That's what we do here. Now, today's episode is on a Tuesday because this week is Thanksgiving, the holiday where we Americans celebrate the 1-month anniversary of Christmas songs being on the radio. Thanks, radio. All I want for Christmas is for them to shut up. But we also
shut up in the middle of October.
Right, just no Christmas songs until Black Friday onward, and then it's okay. But we also gather for friends and family and to be thankful for what we got. So this year, what are you most thankful for, Aaron?
Well, I am thankful for my bountiful harvest of social media block lists, for which I feel gives my friends list meaning.
Bob Ross, not okay. Still not thankful for that guy.
Rosewater, just,
Robo Rosewater, so much fun.
The ones that aren't blocked feel so much better when you have this huge pile of blocks underneath it.
Somebody actually sent me a tweet the other day, and they were like, "Oh my god, I'm surprised Aaron hasn't blocked me yet." Now, see, that's a good feeling.
Wow. Yeah, there's a big list. That's the block people, and then a big list. That's people who ain't blocked. Yeah, and Bob Ross, it's on the big one. You can't have it. And the robot is on the big one, as if the robot was going to reach out. Robot can't reach out. People want to retweet robot, can't retweet robot. It's not okay. It's not. You can't spread joy and happiness. It's not all right. Ruben.
Well, I'll tell you, I personally, as I'm at home, I'm thankful for my mom's delicious cooking and my dad's always excellent turkey recipe. And as someone who is moving back to Las Vegas very soon, that turkey, it's going to be the last time that I'll be seeing some natural breasts for some time.
Wow. The all white meat, you say? Woo.
Well, we'll see.
No injections of
some basting.
Some basting. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Some non-organic material. Some stuffing, if you will.
Some spice, yeah.
Some stuffing. And I'm not talking about Doc McStuffins.
Coming back for seconds. Look, we could go all night with these.
We could go. Now, I am thankful for all the people in my life, like my kids and the fans watching right now. Thank you guys very much. Who, during the hard times and the good, are willing to tap the cards for me, so I don't always have to.
Aww.
You know,
sappy son of a.
Can't always do the tapping, and sometimes the people tap for. You know what? And if anything, this year's been a week, or this year's been one of change and of great amounts for myself personally and even professionally. And I got to tell you, it's been really terrific. And to end this on somewhat of a sort of again a positive note, I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for everybody watching. It's been a hell of a year, and I hope to do better and do more, and for things to keep improving.
Mm-hmm.
So you guys are terrific.
When you dropped the octave, I was like, oh man, it's serious time now.
Dude, that's when the music hits in, when like the 80s sitcom, and like it's time to have like a moment.
Did the orchestra just switch to a minor key?
Dude,
I just heard
Dude, did we just have a teaching moment, bro?
Did 2016's been weird for everyone, not the least of which me. And I'm also quite thankful that this has been my weekly rock, and good conversation. And all kidding aside, Ruben Bressler putting all kidding aside for a second.
Wow.
I really needed this podcast this year, and it was really helpful for me.
Wow. Yeah, we're being really candid here. I'm admitting that we need graveyard hate in the world. You're admitting that you need the show. Like, this is really real.
Aaron, anything that you're thankful for as we close out here?
Yeah, I mean, I just had no idea this show would reach as many people as it does. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll never forget. I mean, I was at Grand Prix Vegas. We're going on what, 2 years, 2 or 3 years doing this, and
This will be 2 years next
May?
June.
June.
But I mean, I remember our first episode came out when I was at Grand Prix Vegas. And I mean, the episode hadn't even been out 24 hours. And I remember I could not even cross the venue. And mind you, the Vegas venue was big. I could not even cross the venue. I hadn't even watched our video yet. I didn't even know what we looked like, what we sounded like. And I had people stopping me and saying they loved the show. I am consistently amazed at the number of people who stop me and the things that they remember. The way that we've sort of added bacon on your cheeseburger to the lexicon, and that we've added, you're wrong and I hate you, and just I had no idea the impact that our show would have. And every time I go to an event, I'm always blown away by the things people say to me and the things people remember, because I just had no idea that a show about three people hanging out would make such a difference. Or even just in the last couple of weeks, the people saying, I really needed to just escape right now, I really needed to hear your voices. And I just think of it as hanging out with two of my friends, and I had no idea what people saw in us. And that's just so amazing and humbling, and thank you so much.
And I hope that in some way this podcast lets folks at home know that you can argue a lot and be very mad at your friends, but once the segment's over, you got to switch over to the next scene.
Yeah,
and then keep moving on.
It is the ties that bind, ladies and gentlemen. So, Aaron,
one of our viewers suggested that we should have called this episode "Love and Hate," which I needed to call out.
Loves before. And the hates. So, Aaron, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Ruben, thanks for hanging out, buddy.
Thank you. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody.
That's right. Happy Thanksgiving as we go into
safe travels.
Our final slide. So that ends another episode of Magic Mics. I want to thank you guys for joining us here live to discuss all things magic. Thanking my co-host, you guys for watching, and hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters, or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe, do everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, plus a day, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody. And happy Thanksgiving.